Hello, everyone. This is my presentation on Engendering Democracy in Brazil by Sonia Alvarez. So, Sonia Alvarez is a distinguished political scientist and sociologist of Latin American studies at University of Massachusetts Amherst. She specializes in women's social movements, protest politics, and transnational feminisms in Latin America, with a particular focus on Brazil and the Southern Cone. She has authored several books and journal articles on the above themes. Much of her research involves active participant observation, where she coincides her research on women's movements in the region with doing research alongside them. So, Engendering Democracy in Brazil, Women's Movements in Transition Politics is a book that covers the role of women in society during Brazil's transition from military regime to democracy. In this book, she aims to advance the theoretical understandings of women's roles in society and their relationship with the political structures. She sought to understand how the democratic transition allowed women to begin advancing their political claims. And within this book, she incorporates a lot of themes found in sociology and political science scholarship. Yes. Okay. So for the methodology and sources of this book, Alvarez based her book on fieldwork in Sao Paulo, mainly through participant observation, interviews, document analysis, surveys, and informal conversations with middle-class women participating in the social movements. She does not necessarily cover as much within lower class movements. However, she is transparent in the fact that she had difficulties accessing these groups and does her best to bridge this gap in the subjects in order to make her work more representative by incorporating a grassroots organization in Jardim Miriam, a neighborhood in the favelas of Brazil. And for the theoretical framework of this book, Alvarez clearly outlines her conceptual framework. She largely focuses on social movement theories and feminist theories. Within this feminist theory umbrella, she distinguishes between feminine groups, or groups that advance practical gender interests in line with traditional gender roles, and feminist groups, or groups that advance strategical interests that are shaped by social, political, and historical factors. She distinguishes between these groups to better examine how different women's movements navigated the changing political structures of the transition period. She argues that strategic gender interests are shaped by social class, and are influenced by social, political, and historical structural factors and changes. Throughout her work, she focuses at times on political opportunity structures, which is a key concept found in social movement theory, to argue that the opening of the political opportunity through the newly established democratic institutions allowed women to advance their political and social claims. She also looks at several factors found in social movement theory, such as resource mobilization, organization, and strategic interactions with political parties and state institutions, to better account for their successes in playing a role in this period of transitional politics. As for Sonia Alvarez's findings, she notes several important findings to help explain the paradox of how the women's movements emerged during a very repressive period of the military dictatorship. The repressive and reactionary policies led women to mobilize to combat impoverishment and other social issues through grassroots organizations and protest movements. Although the state initially did not view women organizing as a political force or a threat, this eventually changed as the military dictatorship began to open towards the idea of civilian rule. And despite being underestimated initially, when the period of transition to democracy came, several political parties turned to women for support and ultimately had to incorporate some of the women's issues into their platforms to gain political support from this untapped source of support. She also critiques feminist scholars who viewed the state as the enemy. Throughout the book, it's apparent that Sonia Alvarez views the state as an important actor as the political opportunity arises through institutions. She ultimately claims that the makeup of political regimes are more important. This book received various praises and critiques after being published. As for the strengths, Sonia Alvarez provides a comprehensive overview of several feminist theories and social movement theories. And the inclusion of actual subjects through participant observation and interviews demonstrates her ability to work alongside the women's protest movements rather than just taking a purely passive observer role. And she advances the scholarship on Latin American women's movements. Some critics have argued that her claim of integrating race, class, and gender in her analysis is misleading, as she bases the bulk of her analysis on the middle-class woman she observed. However, as seen in an earlier slide, Alvarez does address this flaw and does her best to overcome it by including the Hardim Miriam grassroots organization and addressing the gaps in her access to several different women's movement groups. And another potential weakness to be found within this work is the fact that the research is based solely on fieldwork within Sao Paulo. It may be argued that this is not representative of the women's movements as a whole in Brazil, and some of the generalizations and conclusions reached may be misleading. And although the analysis would be stronger with the inclusion of data from other fringe areas, Alvarez's work still puts forth valuable information on the role of women in periods of democratic transition in Latin America in particular. As for her contribution to the literature, the theoretical understandings of the role of women in Latin American politics are greatly developed within this work. Her propositions may be conceptually useful for analyzing other women's movements in the region, like those that occurred in Chile and Argentina during the repressive dictatorships. She employs several methods for analyzing the cases, demonstrating her commitment to uncovering the structural and sociological factors behind the emergence and success of women's movements that were gaining relevance in Brazil. And this is important as the book is an excellent representation of the sociological and political science theories, as well as cultural studies and theories on gender that have been put forth and built upon by following studies.